Good evening and welcome to Kini News. PKR President Anwar Ibrahim has expressed his anger over the recent arrests of activists Fahmi, Reza and Mukmin Nantang, saying that it was an excessive use of institutional intimidation in clamping down on freedom of expression.
PKR President Anwar Ibrahim has called on the Perikatan Nasional government to stop using draconian laws to silence critical views and differing opinions. In a statement on Facebook, he said that the recent arrest of activists Fahmi, Reza and Mukmin Nantang were unnecessary and was an excessive use of institutional intimidation in clamping down on freedom of expression. He claimed that the action by the government in rolling back freedoms is clearly a desperate attempt to stop criticism and for them to cling on to power. Malaysia has already seen its human rights and press freedom rankings decline under the regime over unchecked abuse of power, he said. Anwar also urged Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin's administration to carry out its responsibilities to the people instead of stifling their voices. He said the government should listen to the wisdom of the people and work for the people, not for themselves. Anwar said this in response to the arrest of artist and activist Fahmi Reza on Friday for alleged sedition, as well as the arrest of 7 individuals, including Mukmin, who were nabbed for protesting the extension of an enhanced movement control order in Kampung Muhibah Raya in Tawau, Sabah on Saturday. Fahmi was released on Saturday after being questioned in an investigation under Section 4.1 of the Sedition Act 1948 and Section 233 of the Communications and Multimedia Act by the Bukit Aman Classified Criminal Investigation Unit. He had been detained for a jealousy team Spotify playlist that was allegedly insulting the Raja Permaisuri Agong Tunku Hajah Azizah Aminah Maimunah Iskandaria. Meanwhile, Mukmin and 6 other individuals are expected to be released today. They had been remanded for 2 days to facilitate investigations into the obstruction of civil servants from discharging their duties, violating the COVID-19 Preventive Standard Operating Procedure, and holding an assembly without a permit.
The government has given their assurance that Parliament will be called to convene when the right time comes.
De facto Law Minister Taqiyuddin Hassan said Parliament will be called to convene at a suitable time, either before or after the emergency ends. In a statement today, he said the government would seek the advice of the relevant agencies, especially the Ministry of Health and the National Security Council on the matter. The statement came following a call by Umno for the Perikatan Nasional government to lift the suspension on Parliament. Taqiyuddin said, the government is aware of its constitutional responsibilities, but the priority now is to curb the spread of COVID-19. He said this includes protecting the health of all members of Parliament, as well as Parliament officials and everyone involved. He added that throughout the emergency, the opposition could give their opinions and suggestions to the government through existing channels, which includes the independent committee set under the emergency ordinance to advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on matters relating to the enforcement of the emergency. He said there shouldn't be any suspicion or distrust about abuse of power as the government was functioning as usual. And this includes the aspect of administrative monitoring by the relevant authorities, especially the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, National Audit Department, and the Public Accounts Committee. Yesterday, UMNO Secretary General Ahmad Mazlan said that the UMNO Supreme Council had decided to demand the government to allow Parliament and all state assemblies to reconvene. Ahmad said Parliament and the state assemblies are where elected representatives conduct check and balances to ensure that the government does not act on a whim at the expense of the people's welfare, and there must be accountability in the way the government spends public funds.
Past President Abdul Hadi Awang said that a political group which opposed the emergency order was not concerned about the COVID-19 pandemic, which has claimed the lives of many around the world. Now, before we move on with this story, if you like our content, check the link below to become a contributor to Kini TV.
Past President Abdul Hadi Awang said that those who oppose the emergency order are worse than religious extremists, labeling them as political extremists. He said they did not care about the COVID-19 pandemic, which had claimed the lives of many around the world. Hadi said that their greed is worse than religious extremists that had detonated bombs and killed their victims in smaller numbers as compared to the victims of the COVID-19 pandemic. In a Facebook post today, he said the group did not care about people and used economic and security issues as excuses for his excessive politicking. He said their excuses are political in nature and done in a bid to regain power that has been lost. Hadi added that they disregarded the possibility of dangers to come by orchestrating political moves all the time and did not take into account the risk with the ongoing pandemic. The Perikatan National Government had declared an emergency in January in a bid to contain the resurgence of COVID-19 cases. Parliament was also suspended throughout the duration of the emergency. Opposition leaders and some from the government bench had opposed the emergency and called for the government to reconvene Parliament. Last week, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong had granted his consent for an ad hoc committee appealing for the end of the emergency to have an audience with him. The committee had launched a petition to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to end the emergency in March.
Opposition parties should be friendly to one another even if they did not fully work together. Now this is according to DAP's Political Education Director Lim Chin Tong, who said the opposition's focus now should really be on defeating Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin.
DAP's Political Education Director Lim Chin Tong said that Pakatan Harapan should aim to win the next general election by molding itself as a ruling coalition to be. This would include being cordial with other opposition parties in order to focus on defeating Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin. He said, opposition parties should be friendly to one another, even if they did not fully work together. Or at least, they did not have to be aggressive towards one another. When asked if Harapan should continue working with former Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad and his new party Pejuang, this was what he had to say.
Actually, I think as long as Mahathir is not a Prime Minister candidate, then he's one of many opposition leaders, and we should engage all opposition leaders to see whether we can work together. If we cannot work together, then so be it. But the point is that Mahathir is no longer our Prime Minister candidate, and therefore he is just one of many players. You don't have to make him make an enemy out of him. But the point is, our main enemy is Tashwin Muhyiddin.
Liu added that Harapan must be clear on its election formula by building a winning coalition not just among parties, but also with the voters. He said the coalition had to be sure of who they are and what they aspired to be before they worked with other people.
What is at hand is how to defeat Muhyiddin and how to build a better government, build a better ruling coalition. So I think that is important, that instead of wasting time to quibble about who we should work with, I think we should work on our agenda. What are Pakatan's agenda? And if there are common ground, we work together. If there's no common ground, we don't have to attack each other.
Shellfish, red meat, and beer. If you love indulging in these foods, you may end up with high uric acid level in your blood. These foods consist high level of purine, a substance that will eventually break down into uric acid and be excreted through our urine. It is recommended that the amount of dietary purines should be kept between 600 to 1000 milligrams per day. Having too much uric acid in your blood can cause attacks of gout. It can also cause kidney stones and blockage in the kidney. The crystallization of the excessive uric acid in your blood can be eased by reducing purine-rich food to only 100 to 150 milligrams daily, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and consuming urinary alkalinizer like Ural. It consists of sodium bicarbonate, citric acid, and sodium citrate that increases the urinary pH and solubility of uric acid to prevent crystallization. Best of all, it's lemon-flavored and sugar-free. Ural, effective urinary alkalinizer. Neutralize your uric acid problem now.
Umno has announced that they will seek guidance from the Registrar of Societies on holding their party polls this year amidst the COVID-19 pandemic.
UMNO Secretary General Ahmad Mazlan said UMNO will write to the ROS for advice and guidelines to hold the party elections this year, in line with the UMNO Constitution and standard operating procedures against COVID-19. In a statement, He said this is to ensure that the election process involving 66,287 delegates meetings and 3.3 million members from Umno branches, as well as the women, youth and putri wings, can be held effectively and smoothly considering the rising COVID-19 cases. His statement came following the Umno Supreme Council meeting yesterday evening. The meeting had been highly anticipated, as prior to it, some Umno Supreme Council leaders had indicated that they wanted to push back against plans to postpone the Umno elections. The decision to seek guidance on holding party polls this year suggests that Umno President Ahmad Zahid Hamidi's faction is under pressure from factions opposed to him. However, no date for the party election was announced in Ahmad's statement. In the statement, Umno also formally called on the Perikatan Nasional government to lift the suspension on parliament. Ahmad said the party Supreme Council decided to demand that the government allow parliament and all state assemblies to reconvene. He said this was in line with the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's comments that the legislature can still convene even during the emergency, which came into force on January 11th. He added that the standard operating procedures should be set to allow parliament to convene, like other democracies across the world.
That's a wrap for Kini News this evening. For more stories, go to kinitv.com. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook to get the latest news updates. Now, before we go, if you would like to support the independent media, do consider a subscription to MalaysiaKini.com. You'll find some deals on the website waiting for you right there. Now, if you're heading out, don't forget your mask, and when you can, do try to stay home. I'm Daniel Anthony. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay safe, Malaysia.